Hello everybody, hello friends. Um, First of all, a little drink and a little observation. Please listen to this. Can you hear the ice hits the glass? And the sound is so beautiful. It's actually very important what you are drinking from. It really adds something to our life, these uh, little features of the everyday living. Uh, Please don't think I'm showing off here. I do drink from this glass. It's beautiful. So today we're going to talk about censorship. It's a hot topic these days, obviously. So, but to start with, what it is, whether it's a new thing, why it is important now, and basically what is the deal, what is the whole story. Um, First of all, censorship is something omnipresent. It has always been, perhaps as long as human societies exist. Just like some other aspects of our social organization, it takes different shapes and different kind of styling uh, in different societies. Well, a bit like corruption as well. It's always has always been everywhere. It's just organically a part of human organization. So I see censorship a bit like a gardening. It's our desire to trim up some information jungles, and shape them somehow, give them a shape that is favorable to our well designs. And it's totally natural that every society, every ruling class, every mechanism of social organization gives way to some information while holding some other information and dissolving it. Obviously, censorship is extremely high in times of confrontation, in the wartime, when different sides shoot at each other with propaganda, and obviously there's a way to block it and to push through your own propaganda onto another side. So, and our present moment is full of conflict. So why to be, surprised that censorship is back and it's big way, very, very visible. We have lots of conflicts and a lot of conflicting sides, and the confrontation is quite severe. I think that, like with almost every human design or plan or dream, there is an ideal of censorship and there is a real life implementation. I can quite support the concept itself. I mean, in its ideal implementation, it could be a good thing, because indeed some information is just spam, so we want to filter it. For example, take Gmail. Gmail is great and popular. Why? One of the reasons, because they control spam very well. They really filter it very efficiently, much better than most other email systems. For example, much better than Yahoo did. Your Yahoo mailbox was always like, what it's called, what is the word, was full of garbage basically coming from every side. And Gmail is filtering, their mechanisms are almost perfect. That's why we like it. So they implemented a very efficient, well, call it censorship, filtering. And in a broader sense, there's a lot of things that are harmful and need to be censored out. Is it horrible to live in a system with censorship? Well, it's also interesting. I was born in Soviet Union, in a highly censored society, and I've lived there almost half of my life. Well, 20 years and then 30 more in the kind of free world, so to speak. So I can compare and I can see how the transition also had its effect, and can talk about that as well. And then what I found in the so-called free world, it's not as free as it claims to be. And it turned out that there are plenty of taboos here, and there are very, very strict censoring mechanisms here in Western world, and have always been. Only Westerners were not aware of them, for the most part, in mass. They used to thinking that they live in a free world, and then there are some not free worlds, like some communist regimes or some dictatorships or whatever, authoritarian regimes. The thing is, there are, just as I said in the beginning, censorship has always been there in every society, but the styling, the implementation can vary a lot depending on, well, on nuances of social organization. In totalitarian countries, in totalitarian societies with very strict government control, can be government or can be a church control, whatever. I mean, any type of regime or society that is very strictly guided with very strong government access, they have their censorship in the open. The rules are known to everybody. So here are the rules, people. You can talk about this, you cannot talk about this. You know, your freedom of speech kind of is limited right here, and everybody knows that. Or information from some other sources can come or can be blocked, and again, the rules are clear to everybody. And that's in a way very convenient because people know about it. They're aware of the limitations. They know how to play around them in some cases. Like in Soviet Union, we had like extremely developed political satire, but it was like very nuanced. You couldn't say something in the face, you know, like my favorite American satiric George Carlin. He could say something like, they fuck us. And in Soviet Union, you couldn't say they, and you couldn't say fuck. You were censored like on both level. Like you couldn't use strong language, and obviously you couldn't hint at that the government, the Communist Party, somehow does something, you know, not graceful. However, our very subtle satire could really say things between the lines, and we were very good at reading between the lines. So you didn't have to say it aloud, you know, certain things, but everybody knew them. And obviously, everybody concerned was aware that this society is not free. It even didn't pretend to be free in a way that certain things were not allowed. Yet in the West, we find a different picture. On surface, it seems that everything is possible. You can say like, fuck Donald Trump's, and that's totally fine. You can say both. You can say fuck, and you can say fuck your president. So no political limitation here, no limits to how you use the language and stuff like that, moral limitations. And that looked very much like freedom, and that is freedom in the consciousness of like total majority of people. However, when you dig a little bit deeper, you find how limited these societies are and how you can't question certain dogmas and certain ideas, and how this questioning is being oppressed. The censorship is very real. However, during the period of kind of Western flourishing and prosperity, when US-led coalition totally dominated the world and nobody was around to question this domination, they kind of allowed more freedoms to the population. You could do certain things, say certain things, because these empowering you, it doesn't change anything. So one way of censoring stuff, and it's like a very elegant way, I must admit, which West has always been great at, is to basically, yes, you can speak, you can say things, but nobody hears you. That's the trick. Yeah, speak, all right, But no, but of course the system is set so that your voice is totally not heard. But once your voice reaches masses, once your voice becomes strong enough, then of course the old good methods are back at place. Like see what happened to Martin Luther King, to Malcolm X, to I don't know, Kennedy, whatever. Maybe it's a bit different story, but of course old good brutal totalitarian methods can be used, when other liberal democratic methods don't function anymore. Or what happened to all these anti-Vietnam protests, and what was the story? There were a lot of very unpleasant episodes of direct totalitarian oppression on people in the countries of the so-called free world. However, in most cases, they use this soft power of basically muting you through piling up like mountains of garbage and making your message invisible. I mean, your dissent message. Right. I mean, and back to this strict totalitarian regime. No, they don't have that mechanism. They just regulate everything. It just has to carry a stamp of government approval. So you are approved to speak, you speak. You are not approved, you don't speak. Very easy, very simple to understand. Very inflexible in the end, because, well, lots of great things are censored out that way. So comparing my experiences of living between two systems, I should say this. For example, Soviet Union, right? Heavily censored society. No drugs, sex, and rock and roll. No fun, kind of. No, nothing hostile, nothing cruel, like no what it's called, this horror movies. Like this genre was totally absent in Soviet cinema. Soviet cinema was massive, but horror movies, no, because no slashers, no like maniac films, nothing like that. No action movies in a common like modern, I don't know, Western perception, what it is, like shooting, killing people. No, in Soviet movies, people didn't die that much. It wasn't like very common, and murder has never been a subject of what you're watching it, for. Like even crime stories were kind of more like theatrical psychological dramas with talking, but without all much action. No sex, yeah, I said no rock and roll. So television was totally harmless. You could leave your child with a telly and go away, do your things. You knew he will not see your child, but won't see anything unpleasant or just evil there. So speaking of, in a way, I could see good sides to it. It was, in a way, it created this very innocent kind of pure landscape and media landscape, so to speak. And of course, there was this direct party line in all the news, and the state narrative was like pushed onto every Soviet person, which created some positive effects again. Kind of solidarity, because people shared basically the same idea of what's going on and kind of the same basic knowledge about the world. It helps, because what we see now, people sit in their separate echo chambers, and they build up like completely different pictures of the world, and they can't communicate then, because they have like entirely different ideas of what the world is, like everything, like about the society they live in, about their values, about lots of things. They just totally alien to one another, like they don't belong to the same community, to the same society. So how do you want them to, for example, cooperate in a process called democracy if they have like totally alien views on things? And in that kind of well-groomed and gardened media reality of the Soviet Union, as one example, people had more or less the same sources, and they shared their idea of what's going on to a high extent, which is in a way very helpful. I'm not saying it's healthy or great. I'm saying it helps to build this sustainable society that is kind of lacking inner severe confrontation and conflicts. The problem, by the way, started, you say, the problems, it started later when we were flooded by all sort of information and a lot of insane things. Then what else? So it's innocent, it provides unity. The state-built narrative, well, when you have just one narrative to care about, you can build a good one. And today, looking back at what was preached to us by the Communist Party leadership right through Soviet media channels, I should say the picture of the world was quite adequate, actually, what they told us. It was quite adequate. And basically, it was all through the lens of the communist teaching about classical war between like proletariat and bourgeoisie. It was about, if we had coverage of the West, we would see, for example, some of the negatives in Western life caused by this division of poor and rich, and basically by oppression of the capitalist class, or from the capitalist class. We would be very well versed about capitalist interventionism, about all the unjust wars that US-led coalition waged on other nations. But that said, we would receive a lot of cultural information, quite positive. So our media never tried to build a totally negative picture of the Western world. It was quite attractive and remains so. We just focused on the samples of classical art from these countries, from countries of Western Europe and from the United States, rather than this, kind of modern day mass culture trash, so to speak. Well, of course, we lost so much. We had very limited access to pop music and to jazz in that account, and even to Western classical music wasn't also totally exposed to us, and of course cinema, and well, so much. But I mean, everything comes with a price. So we're talking now about censorship, and what I'm trying to say, this highly censored society wasn't like a horrible prison to one's mind. It was totally okay to live. So now when people are running hysterically about censorship, I would say kind of one word for it. It can be as such. The idea is not like a total evil as such. However, further on, we will talk about the implementation. This is where the problem, not the censorship itself, not the concept, that is, well, one of the possibilities, but the implementation, because everything is done for people, by some people. So who is in charge? Who are these people? What are their goals? Why do they do this censorship? Why do they implement this? And how do they do this? This is what is important. This is actually a crucial question. And another one, the dynamics. Why now? What happens? What are the changes? Because the changes are perhaps, again, very important indicator of what's going on generally. So in a Western world where freedom of speech has been one of the most beloved holy cows, most worshipped holy cows for decades, and this is how Western countries basically juxtaposed themselves to totalitarian states, like to communist states. This is how they insisted have always insisted on their moral superiority, that they are free countries, free world, while these other communist countries, are not free, that they allow their citizens to freely access information and build their critical mind, while in these totalitarian states, everybody is being kind of oppressed and boxed into certain, set of views. So how come that in this free, we always use, when we say freedom on this channel, we always use big quote marks, because it's well, one of the fairy tale concepts, but so to speak, free world. How come that today we see a drastic and massive and abrupt turn into this highly censored society and it's totally in the open? It's been advocated by central channels, central information channels, yes, and by lots of members, ordinary members of the society. 1 second, sorry. No, one thing about censorship that I forgot to mention, it's always for your good, right? People who are in charge will never say, we will grab this freedom from you, away from you, because we just want to humiliate you and reduce you and oppress you. No, they won't tell it. Well, not in the 20th, 21st century. Maybe in some, some primitive warlords would do that, and we will piss on you as well, just for fun. No, we don't do that, that way. We always do things for your good. And that's crucial, of course. So Soviet censorship was for our good, because they didn't allow, all this filthy, nasty stuff coming from the West, all this porn and stuff. So is here today we see how in America we are witnessing like a real censorship revolution led by the Democratic Party. They want to censor like everything, like freedom of speech, because the fear of disinformation and misinformation and some sort of fake information is so high, and it treats democracy. Obviously, democracy is such a fragile thing that, or all these hostile bots from Russia and China and all these conspiracy theorists, domestic terrorists, and everybody, they just destroy the democracy like that, Well, then you ask yourself, so what is democracy then? If these guys and this and this and this, nobody can talk, so what is democracy? It's just Democratic Party itself, because I think, if I understand correctly, now they completed this little theatrical coup in Washington, and now Democratic Party controls everything. So is United States a one-party system now, right? I think has become. Yeah, of course it's more convenient. I recognize that, by the way. It's easier to manage. Why do this multiple party? One, better to have a king actually, or emperor. That's easy concept, easy to understand and to follow, and very strict censorship to any unwanted voices, would it be from abroad or domestically. Any questions, anything, any suspicions, any rumors, everything has to be just cut very short. Let it be just Washington Post, New York Times, and I don't know, SNBC, CNN. Oh, that's already a lot, that's already 4x against just one Pravda. So what happens is very peculiar and very significant, because we are witnessing how the subtle mechanisms of censorship that have always been in the West manifest themselves and become kind of mainstream, absolutely openly accepted doctrines, and how people change their view on this and I'm not sure, do Western people, if anybody is hearing me now, do you notice how you change your views on this whole big subject? Like last year, I think, or a couple of years ago, definitely you posted like this quote by Voltaire: "I don't agree with you, but I will give away my life, to protect your right to speak," something like this, right? And now censorship is okay. I mean, with a lot of people, even in my circle on Facebook, I see that they say, yeah, let's kind of deplatform Trump, deplatform all these white supremacists, deplatform all of them, all the millions of people, just, block Russian bots away, and all the Russians as well. Like, Russians don't have a say, not Chinese, obviously, they're, Chinese. Why should they talk even, and so on. And maybe America should just build this big Trump's wall, but also in internet, not just the wall, but this like kind of, they should, I think, talk to the Chinese colleagues and ask how they build this great Chinese wall around their country, and also in their internet, to protect the fragile treasure of democracy from some foreign forces. And I guess I need to somehow go to some resolution here. So one point is, as such, I see nothing unnatural and even too bad about the concept of censorship. Actually, I would like it to be implemented, but under condition that the main censor was a smart guy like me, for example. I would take over. Okay, I'm joking, because I realize it's a huge work and I don't want to do it. So maybe, but if I had like the whole censorship institution under my management, then I would probably consider, well, it's even more work. I don't know, need to think about it. But I mean, I would never allow it, some assholes, to be in control of the information that I receive, or some very, very unpleasant people with very dirty goals, No, I don't want that one. But some good censorship, in my view, is not a horrible idea at all. And to prove it, I have an experience of my 20 years in USSR. It was okay. It was far from perfect, It was very far from perfect, yes, but it was okay. I mean, it wasn't damaging to a human psyche. It wasn't, what? On the whole, it wasn't worse than this freedom we have now. It was just different. The second idea is, what matters is not censorship or not censorship, but the change. Because the change of the attitude to this very important subject is a signal of total, deep, real transformation into something else. Well, into a strictly controlled society from something we call liberal democracy. So I would say democracy, what went down, set down as a sediment in this chemical, I don't know the terminology. Basically, things set down and transformed into some very static, transforming into something very static and rigid from what it was before. We want to ask why, and I don't know why exactly, but we are talking this whole bunch of last few years, we're talking about deep crisis of capitalism in the whole, deep crisis of international economics. We are talking about crisis of the model, end of expansion of capitalism, because basically all the markets are taken and there's no much more space for maneuvering left, and capitalism requires constant expansion. So we see a lot of changes that signal the end of the world the way we see it, we know it, and particularly the end of the the so-called free world as we know it. And we see at least two emerging superpowers. First of all, China, and then I must still mention Russia. I imagine it qualifies, at least for its weapons. And then India, I imagine, is the next. Maybe it's even no. Well, I don't know where India is, but India is a serious player, and it's going to be even bigger in the coming years, I guess. So, and that means the aggravation and tensions only increase because these who were in charge don't want to retreat and give up their influence, while the new powers a little bit kind of push to at least defend their interests and maybe expand their influence. And that's natural. So we see this aggravation and hostility, and censorship is taking like very open forms in the West. No, as such, it is what it is. So our internet freedoms are in a very big danger because very soon freedom of speech and freedom of communication can be shut down too. I have a friend in the US. He's a Marine officer, actually on a submarine, actually, if I understood correctly, on a nuclear submarine, and a very nice person and a jazz lover. So happened. Well, why not? We discussed with him this Cold War aggravation between his country and country of my loyalty, Russia, and I pictured him this surrealistic kind of picture. So there is a war, there is like all this hostility between us, and we can still talk, while we belong to kind of enemy camps, but we can still talk about records, about our favorite artists, our memories of visiting concerts. How real is that? And he said, and not at all, not real, because the first thing they will do, they will shut down all the channels of communication between citizens. Of course, it's impossible for the powerful elites who are in a war, and people never benefit from a war, and they don't need it, don't want it. They would never let us talk directly. So censorship is a big step that direction also, because it's particularly hits international communication very much. I mean, there is domestic censorship, but again, it's also a sign of consolidation of power when one group of people take over all the power and cut off the other group from spreading their ideas. So it's the end of democracy as we know it. Again, and I will always repeat it, democracy has never existed. It's a dream, just like censorship is another dream, and democracy is a dream, and communism is a dream. It's all dreams. We only have been somewhere at a certain level, few steps that direction, but never in the ideal. So, but even this ideal is kind of left behind, and we see how Western democracies actually turn back towards a lot stricter totalitarian type of control. I don't want to bring Corona into this conversation because that's another conversation, and there's a lot to say here, but it's like the whole thing. Maybe, and there are plenty of reasons to think so, maybe COVID, this pandemic, is a fake that is used to basically implement this new normal where democracy is gone, where certain very basic and very organic freedoms that Western audiences have enjoyed like for decades, maybe they are over and no more available. So maybe COVID is one convenient mechanism to take away this freedom, because as we know, the easiest way to take something away from you is to scare you very, very badly. I mean, even racketeers at the street, I have experience, I met some. They don't beat you up, that's the wrong kind of idea of what racket is about. No, 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 they come to you and they just scare you so that you barely can talk and think. They say, for example, listen, you see this is a gun in my pocket, I will just shoot your leg through right now if you just give me your wallet. And maybe this guy doesn't have a gun, but you don't know, and also you are not psychologically prepared for such aggression, so you oftentimes submit to this threat, and threat can be imaginable, you see. So on a bigger scale, every totalitarian regime used fear to scare the citizens and then control them. It makes it much, much easier. And then you can also use citizens against each other. And that's also, and because there have never been a totalitarian system that had enough of manpower to control every citizens. Like they wouldn't have two Gestapo officers, I don't know, or two Stasi agent or two KGB agent for every man, in the country. Of course not. They have always been the minority, always. I mean, them and their soldiers, I don't know, they steal a small percentage of the population, but the population is scared and population is busy to control one another and basically work for them. This is how it works. So COVID does make that impression, but I don't want to push this idea here very much, and it's a different talk. Just saying that this new normal is already here, and we see how censorship is introduced, first of all, in the United States in the very obvious forms. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, lots of Americans, millions of Americans welcome it. And they don't even remember that they are free citizens of a free country. But this makes me actually laugh my ass out, because honestly, no, I'm not about, I don't have like bad feelings to my American brothers, but I have kind of sarcastic, ironic feelings to you guys. I mean, Americans, hello. Because for decades, I've got to hear, to know about this attitude of superiority. We are free people from the free world. How easy you give up your freedoms, how easy you fallen victims of cheap manipulation that I can see even from far, far, far away, even not being in your country, and how easily you submit to all this bullshit. This, of course, makes me laugh, honestly. And how ironic it is, I lived in this totalitarian society kind of, and a lot of my countrymen really dreamed of kind of breaking through to the freedoms. Some people did, yes, or at least to this prosperity. And now I'm here, well, Hamburg, beautiful. And what I see the decline of this very democracy, the decline of freedom. And you can't say this, you can't say that, you better watch your language, because minorities can be offended, immigrants can be offended, trans people who I've never seen in my life, but they can be offended, and I should be for some reason aware of that. And of course, the gay people can be offended, and I don't know, whoever else, everybody can be offended. And you should be very careful with what you say, especially the more significant person you are, the more visible you are, the more at stake. Well, of course, someone like me, who cares? But I mean, when you are like a highly visible person, then freedom is over. You can't say anything. Even if you talk out of your best intentions and absolutely sincerely, okay, this is what person I am, for example. But no, you can't say things anymore. Censorship. So where are we coming? Where are we going? Well, we are going to the time, we're moving towards the time of big turbulence, I'm afraid. That's my prediction. I don't want to be like, but I see no other possibility. It's a troublesome time, and all the bad shit is coming our way, I'm afraid. I'm very afraid of that. My hopes are with, well, with division. I hope that the world is divided enough. I am afraid of united world, because united is another dream we spoke. I mentioned a few dreams of the humanity. Of course, it's great to be united, and it's the way to be sometime in the end. But first, we need to really, maybe it can happen after a couple of thousand years, but hardly earlier. Before we unite, we need to grow up. We need to become mature people. We need to abandon our barbaric desires and ambitions. When I see people who control billions, it's barbaric. Wealth is barbaric, but nobody thinks that way. Everybody wants to be, even ask poor people what they want. They want to be rich, but it's barbaric to be rich. What, you imagine you are fat because you eat like for 50 people alone. You sit on a huge pile of gold, and you have, like, I don't know, 50 virgins in your harem, or I don't know, 500. That's what wealth is. I mean, it doesn't have to be literally that. Of course, we live in the age of highly cultural barbarians who wouldn't do that, who are, maybe they're vegans and they're maybe loyal husbands to their wives, or the other way around. But I mean, it's barbaric to be wealthy while others are poor. That's very simple. So we can unite, but only after we overcome these illnesses of childhood. And as far as for now, my hope is with our divisions, that there is a barbaric country called United States with this tribe of goons, aka Americans. But then there is the Great Chinese War, and there is a huge Chinese tribe. And then there is Europe, and then there is Russia. And then even in Europe, hopefully they're divided enough not to blend into something shapeless. Actually, Germans are Germans and French are French, and it's great. And I hope that once these globalization powers kind of press very hard to kind of screw us all in the same manner, these local movements arise and break these chains to shreds, and basically we could always counterbalance one other's ambitions and insanity. I have big trust into nuclear weapons and all sort of advanced weapons that will just kick shit out of everybody. Everybody will be dead. Just don't even think. That's good. That's good. Because when people are totally lacking common sense, any basic dignity, any humanity, any kindness, compassion, then nuclear weapons replace it all very well, because they're just afraid to do certain unthinkable thing, because they know what will happen. If it were not for the nukes, the world would have been through the bloodbath many times over since the World War II. I mean, not just some regions, but the whole thing. We would have World War III, World War IV, World War V, if it were not for nuclear weapons that made it for a while totally unthinkable, impossible to win and benefit from your victory. So that's good to have. And for the time being, hopefully they will improve the technology of killing like anything. That's good. Artificial intelligence hopefully will not make it yet. Too early. Did you see the Terminator? That's it. Or Matrix? That's it. Too early. People who don't have a good command over their own thinking, their own moral, their own behavior should not be allowed to create an artificial intelligence. That's very simple, because we are not intelligent enough. So I really hope at this point of our history we just won't make it. I mean, we will have some good advance in that direction and develop lots of great and very useful as well as very destructive technologies, but we won't be able to create that like real deal artificial intelligence, like the one that is really has a personality and has, no, basically it's artificial soul, or whatever you call it. I hope that just like with space programs, science will stumble upon some limitations that they won't be able to get through at this point with the modern technology. Hopefully so. Because otherwise the risks are huge and totally not even accountable. It's hard to understand what might happen if we will develop a really independent artificial mind. I don't know what will happen, but I would be very, very afraid of that, because our creation, by all means, would have to inherit all our failures, I don't know, our, defects, so to speak. Yeah, so let's see what happens. However, the censorship is already there, or here, it's very real, and it means the world has changed already without us noticing it. Well, I mean, yeah, I talked to people. I chatted with my American friend just the other day. No, everything is as usual. He was cheering up the victory of Joe Biden. The democracy won in his view, and now the world is kind of getting back to its senses in his view. Well, he doesn't see certain things. Soon it will be, but then this comes in mind, this, that boiling frog, slowly, something like that metaphor. People might not, in mass, might not notice some terminal changes in the environment up until the end, because they happen incrementally and they just don't notice one at a time. We will see, right? So censorship, like, to close it up, it's here, it's very visible, it's ugly, because at this point of history in the West, it's accomplished by not so great people with not so pure goals. It's an instrument for domination of certain group of people, obviously, over others. It came with a blast of hypocrisy, because Western values, one of the biggest value is freedom of speech, and it's even implies that this freedom should be ultimate. Like 3 years ago, I spoke with someone who defended the right of neo-Nazis to speak out in the United States. He said, because we have this First Amendment or Second Amendment, I always confuse. Basically, we have this right, and as long as they do not promote like killing of some or some violence, they are fine to speak and to exist, and they have an official fascist party. That's my idea. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, all right, and now all of a sudden nothing is possible, and this circle of possibilities is ever shrinking, and freedom of speech, this main American and Western value, is being compromised in the most open way, but it seems nobody cares. That's very strange, very ironic, and very funny. And very dangerous? We will see. A time of deep transformation has come. That's quite obvious. Okay, I will better stop here. It's already what, 50 minutes almost. Yes. Good night, everybody. Good morning, good evening, whatever time it is on your side of the screen. Ciao, ciao, friends. Bye.